Visions of the Black Heaven, Chapter 6. They got in the Rubicon. The garage door went up, and Duke pulled out into the street. He headed towards Zeno's to get Melody's Jeep. When they got there, she got out and kissed his cheek. He watched her get in her Wrangler and followed her to the Brandywine Apartments on a different side of town. Getting out, she had an expression that said, "Come on in. I'll be a few minutes." Hesitating, he watched her open the apartment front door and go in. She looked back and smiled and then went into the apartment. He got out of the Rubicon and followed her. Her apartment was cozy, clean, and well kept. Its windows faced southwest, allowing the winter sun to shine inside. She had a bird feeder sitting in front of the living room window so she could watch the birds eat in the morning sun. Everything had its place. On one wall there were several pictures of her family and her parents. He was puzzled to see pictures of his friend Caleb graduating out of his military training. It seemed that she had a wall dedicated to Caleb's memory, his life and experience in the military. A family portrait of her parents was on another wall. He just stood there looking at the pictures. He looked at Melody's picture, then at Caleb's picture, and then back at Melody, and realized she looked amazingly like Caleb. He thought, maybe they are identical twins? She came in from the bedroom carrying a small suitcase. She saw him looking at Caleb's pictures and hesitated. Melody got a lump in her throat. She'd not realized how much she missed her family and wanted to share this man she had just met with them. She was sure her father would have approved. She whispered, they were wonderful parents, and Caleb was the best brother a girl could ever have. They stood looking at the pictures for a moment longer. Duke looked at Melody. She could tell that he missed Caleb and that they were very close. Just how close, she was not sure. She put her hand on his cheek. I know, she said. I miss him too. Melody felt they had just shared a moment that they could relate to, each in their own way. They walked to the door in contemplative silence, both remembering their own memories of Caleb. Melody closed and locked her apartment door. He opened the car door, and she looked deep into his smiling eyes, getting in without saying a word, but knowing what he was thinking. As he got into the Rubicon, Melody took his hand and gave it a quick squeeze, then smiled to show support for him. He smiled back. They drove in silence. After a few minutes, he spoke softly. I remember the first time I met Caleb. He was a confident kind of kid. No one ever liked him because of that. Many other men hated Caleb and made it known that they were going to teach him a lesson. Caleb just laughed at them. Well, one day when I was in town shopping, I saw several men watching Caleb, waiting to make their move. They were going to jump him. Caleb must have had that sixth sense. I followed those three men outside. But before I could get out the door, those same three men were on the ground, bleeding, bruised, and broken. Caleb was laughing at them. This only made them more determined to get even with Caleb. I heard one say that they'll be back, and next time they will get even. They never did. Listening with interest, she looked straight ahead as he spoke. She watched the whole scene in her mind's eye. When he finished speaking, she laughed. Yeah, that was Caleb. He was just that kind of way with people. He didn't care about anything or anyone except me, that is. She hesitated and started her own story. Looking straight ahead, she started talking. You want to know how Caleb got into the military? Puzzled at that question, he said, he signed up, didn't he? Well, not really, Melody chuckled. See, in the last month of high school, there were two boys who had a crush on me, and they were determined to have me. She gave him a look of disgust. One day I was walking home from school, and three boys followed me. I had to cross behind a field to get to our home, or walk about a mile out of the way. It was a spring day, and these boys cornered me behind the factory. Caleb was walking in the same direction, but only a few minutes behind me. When he caught up with me, he saw two boys holding me and one feeling me under my shirt and bra. These boys were star athletes, jocks, football and basketball players, kids of affluent families in town. Their families were used to getting their children out of any trouble. Well, when Caleb saw what was happening, they laughed at him, saying there were three of them and only one of him. You know Caleb, the larger the problem, the more determined he became. Caleb pushed the two off of me, and then the three boys attacked him. Caleb beat those boys so bad that one had to go into the hospital for almost a week. Well, the parents of those boys pressed charges, saying Caleb deliberately caused the fight. Neither the parents nor the police would believe me, so the police locked Caleb up. The next morning, my parents and I were at the hearing. The judge asked me what happened, and I told my side of the story. Then the judge asked Caleb his side. Well, you know how Caleb was. He spoke his mind. He admitted beating those boys up and told the judge that he would have done the same thing if his sister was being attacked, or he was not any kind of a man, but a punk. Well, Melody continued. Caleb had the judge in a corner. He was right, but the judge figured Caleb didn't have to beat those boys so bad either. So the judge made an alternative offer. Caleb had the choice of going into the military or going to jail. As you can see, Caleb chose the military. He laughed. Yeah, I can see Caleb doing something like that. When I first really got to know Caleb, we were on maneuvers in the woods, crawling in the forest, trying to get to the opponent's flag without being detected. There I saw a rattlesnake had just crawled by and was still somewhere in the area. I told Caleb to be on the lookout for the snake. He laughed at me and kept crawling as fast as he could. Then all of a sudden he stopped. I whispered, "You okay?" "No," he whispered. "There's a giant snake in front of me." He laughed as he continued. I crawled behind the snake, and I knew the snake was focused on Caleb. Caleb was right. It was a big 7-foot diamondback rattler. I was able to pick it up by its tail, grab its head, and throw it back into the woods out of the way. We went on to win the competition. Later that day, Caleb thanked me for saving his life from that monster snake and offered to teach me special ways to train my mind and body, become faster and faster than I ever thought I would be. We became good friends and always stuck together after that. She smiled. I know what you mean. Caleb was very good at martial arts. He was brutal, but it made me learn how to defend myself.